Language. It's what makes the Homo sapiens the Homo sapiens. Language is the barrier between communication and speech. It's the barrier between immediate desire and a long-term quest for self-actualization. Language has allowed the human race to attain a level of cooperation and teamwork which is simply impossible to other animals. This ability, unique to humans, has allowed us to dominate the Earth and inhabit every last corner of the planet. This ability is responsible for everything in modern human culture. Agriculture, architecture, medicine, even getting to the moon and maybe even further would not be possible without language. Language has taken us from running after large animals with spears to organised civilization. It took us from our unique physical traits to our unique levels of intelligence. It split the atom. It discovered the age of the universe. It brought forth insight and philosophy. But as we champion language, it was at the same time being weaponized by the advancements and innovations that we made as civilized people. As we made the jump from tribe to civilization, something changed. What changed? This video will help explain what changed and how we can be victorious in the war of linguistics. Unbeknownst to most, the most important war is not fought with swords, or guns, or tanks, or even nukes, but with words. It's a war that has been started from the onset of civilization, and one which is still being warred to this day. Authoritarians in power know what power they have by manipulating the fabric of language to make it something which gives them legitimacy, whilst free thought suffers, unbeknownst to most. Without thinking about this, we live our lives, unaware of the power that looms overhead. We are unaware that our words are being taken away from us as we speak. We have discovered the faults which lie within the human psyche, and the aristocracy has learnt to exploit them for their own gains. When the plebeians start using a new word to describe their beliefs, the aristocracy springs into action to take the word and twist it into something it is not. Their goal is to sow discord about how words are being used. Why? The answer is simple. If people are arguing about the semantics, they are divided. They aren't cooperating with each other to bring down the aristocracy. This of course benefits those who are in charge. If the masses are fighting with each other instead of against you, you're in charge. The collective thoughts of the people under your boots are scattered and disorganized. Keep in mind, this is what you, as the government, as the aristocracy, want. There's a fictional world where this happened on a national scale, where language itself was being outright replaced. Slowly but surely, people of lower social classes outside of the party were learning a different language to that their family spoke. However, both the old and new languages were intelligible to each other, at least somewhat. They were different enough to incentivize the learning of this new language to understand what party members were saying, and later, their own sons and daughters. This new language was a simplification of what came before, a streamlining of the old, removing the complexities of the old language to construct something simpler to use in everyday conversation. But at the same time, this language was being hard limited when it came to more abstract concepts. This limit was deliberate. It's no accident that each word should only have one meaning, and that meaning should be controlled by mainstream culture, and culture itself in this world being controlled by the party through indoctrination and external operant coercion. This was a tenet of the totalitarian state of Oceania, Oceania being one of the 3 megastates of George Orwell's 1984. Their language was transitioning between Old Speak, otherwise known in our world as English, and Newspeak, the result of manipulating English to fit this simplified purpose. George Orwell wrote The Principles of Newspeak, an appendix to 1984, to demonstrate how such a process would work. I will now read an excerpt from the book explaining this process. The purpose of Newspeak was not only to provide a medium of expression for the world view and mental habits proper to the devotees of Ingsoc, but to make all other modes of thought impossible. It was intended that when Newspeak had been adopted once and for all, and Oldspeak forgotten, a heretical thought, that is, a thought diverging from the principles of Ingsoc, should literally be unthinkable, at least so far as thought is dependent on words. Its vocabulary was so constructed as to give an exact and often very subtle expression to every meaning that a party member could properly wish to express, whilst excluding all other meaning and also the possibility of arriving at them by indirect methods. This was done partly by the invention of new words, but chiefly by eliminating undesirable words and stripping such words as remained of unorthodox meanings, and as so far as possible of all secondary meaning whatsoever. To give a single example, the word free still existed in Newspeak, but could be only used in such statements as, the dog is free from lice, or this field is free from weeds. It could not be used in its old sense of politically free, or intellectually free, since political and intellectual freedom no longer existed even as concepts, and were therefore of necessity nameless. Quite apart from the suppression of definitely heretical words, reduction of vocabulary was regarded as an end in itself, and no word that could be dispensed with was allowed to survive. Newspeak was designed not to extend but diminish the range of thought, and this purpose was indirectly assisted by cutting the choice of words down to a minimum. Whilst language is usually expanded upon, the opposite can occur if linguistic development is taken under the control of a domineering government. This hasn't just happened in the fictional dystopia of Oceania, but in contemporary Western society also. Let's play a game. I'll say a word, you pause the video and go down to the comments section and tell me what you think the word means. What immediately comes to mind when you hear these words? Ready? Okay, let's play. Liberalism. Socialism. Capitalism. Communism. And finally, anarchism. Alright, have you answered? Good! Let's see how many you got right. The definitions I will use for these words will be lifted from the originators of these philosophies to obtain the original meaning. For liberalism, I will refer to John Locke, an Enlightenment-era philosopher who pioneered the development of what would become modern liberalism. For socialism, I'll refer to the pre-Marxian socialist Henri de Saint-Simon, a notable influencer of Karl Marx. For capitalism, I will refer to the thought of Adam Smith. Communism will directly be taken from Karl Marx himself and his definition of what communism is. And finally, anarchism will be taken from the pioneer of modern anarchism, Pierre-Joseph Proudhon. With that understood, let's define these terms. Liberalism. Liberalism, as espoused by John Locke, refers to his arguments that every individual has natural rights to life, liberty, and property. Locke added that governments must not violate these rights based on the social contract. Liberalism sought to replace the norms of hereditary privilege, state religion, absolute monarchy, the divine right of kings, and traditional conservatism with representative democracy and the rule of law. Liberals also ended mercantilist policies, royal monopolies, and other barriers to trade, instead promoting free markets. Socialism. Socialism, as espoused by Henri de Saint-Simon, focused on the perception that growth in industrialization and scientific discovery would have profound changes on society. He believed that society would restructure itself by abandoning traditional ideas of the temporal and spiritual power, an evolution that would lead, inevitably, to a productive society based on and benefiting from a union of men engaged in useful work, the basis of true equality. He proposed that the state carry out production and distribution, that allowing everyone to have equal opportunity to develop their talents would lead to social harmony, that the traditional state could virtually be eliminated or transformed, and in the long run that the administration over man would be abolished. Capitalism. Capitalism goes back to the Latin origin, caput. This roughly translates in modern English as head. This word may be more familiar as per capita, as in per person. Thus capitalism translates to individual person. Adam Smith explains, capitalism is thus a system of social organisation, by which private money making, the build-up of capital, of herds of money, is its chief end. Adam Smith defended this way of organising human affairs, not just on pragmatic terms, but on moral ones, upending millennia of religion-based orders that one should aver selfishness. In Smith's view, pursuing one's interests to the general indifference of what happens to strangers is actually central to national prosperity. Communism. According to Karl Marx, in a communist society, all private ownership, that is property owned by individuals that was property which generated profit from the labour of others, such as factories, farms, offices, would be appropriated by those workers and ran cooperatively, alongside the abolition of the class system as a whole. In communism, the means of production would belong to the entire community. In the communist movement, a popular slogan stated that everyone gave to their abilities and received according to their needs, as in the older days, from each according to his ability to each according to his needs. Communism was often the end goal of socialism, as Marx theorised on a deterministic path of how society would progress from feudalism through capitalism to socialism and finally arriving at the ultimate goal of communism. Anarchism. According to Pierre-Joseph Proudhon in his book What is Property, he defined anarchism as the absence of a master, of a sovereign. Just as man seeks justice in equality, so society seeks order in anarchy. This idea led to the symbol of anarchism, the A inside of the O, representing this idea that Proudhon created of anarchy. Anarchy seeks the absence of masters and rulers as true order. Proudhon explained this in a future essay, that to be governed is to be watched, inspected, spied upon, directed, law-driven, numbered, regulated, enrolled, indoctrinated, preached at, controlled, checked, estimated, valued, censured, and commanded by creatures who have neither the right nor the wisdom nor the virtue to do so. To be governed is to be at every operation, at every transaction noted, registered, counted, taxed, stamped, measured, numbered, assessed, licensed, authorized, admonished, prevented, forbidden, reformed, corrected, and punished. It is, under pretext of public utility and in the name of the general interest, to be placed under contribution, drilled, fleeced, exploited, monopolized, extorted from, squeezed, hoaxed, robbed. Then at the slightest resistance, the first word of complaint, to be repressed, fined, vilified, harassed, hunted down, abused, clubbed, disarmed, bound, choked, imprisoned, judged, condemned, shot, deported, sacrificed, sold, betrayed, and to crown all, mocked, ridiculed, derided, outraged, and dishonoured. That is government. That is its justice. That is its morality. So, how many did you get? I didn't even get them all, so it doesn't matter if you got them wrong. Hell, I even disagree with some of those definitions. The point I'm making is the amount of diversity that these political terms can cover in conventional discourse. For example, in radical left circles, the definition of communism is pretty ubiquitous. To them, it's the ultimatum of socialism, the rise of the working class against the bourgeoisie to make their own horizontally organised society with an absence of social class, money and state. A mutual aid society where we cooperate with each other, essentially. Marx makes a distinction between the terms nationalisation and socialisation. Nationalisation is merely state ownership of property, whereas socialisation is actual control and management of property by society. To Marxists, there's a difference between the state and society, although many outside of the Marxian framework would think that the state and society are one in the same. However, this isn't accidental. Society as a word has its roots in Latin, and it translates into English as companion. Society therefore is a union of companions, people who cooperate with each other because it's in their interest to do so. Meanwhile, the state traces back to the word estate. With the revival of Roman laws in the 14th century in Europe, The term came to describe the rigid hierarchical structure of medieval feudal society. However, in modern political discourse, these two drastically different terms have almost merged together, along with other terms like nation and civilization. The layman is not going to see any substantial difference between these terms, except for tiny, insignificant points which leave the underarching theory untouched. A nation could be more nationalistic, focused on immigration as a core issue, whilst a society could be a government with more social programs. The two concepts are quite similar to each other and could even overlap, and this is deliberate. They are meant to be similar, if not just two different ways of describing the same exact system. Once a word gains traction outside of government-approved usage, it is to be promptly redefined as soon as possible. The most infamous case of this process happening was during the Cold War in the United States of America. With the rise of two superpowers, the United States of America and the United Soviet Socialist Republic, came two contrasting ideologies. The classical liberal individualist principles of the United States came clashing with the collectivist regulatory policies of the Soviet Union. When it comes to the Cold War, most of us remember the space race and the accumulation of nuclear weapons on both sides. A war of technology ensued for decades, but another war was being fought domestically in the United States. A war of language, a real-life demonstration of the controlling properties of language swept the nation. Throughout universal education, these words were being drilled into the minds of the youth. The youth were taught to fear any word that could be associated with opposition to American conservatism. Socialism, communism, Marxism, whatever. All these words are to lose their meanings and translate into the exact same thing. This was known as the Red Scare, a pivotal moment in American politics, away from the radical populist pre-World War II towards a more moderate one which was more willing to accept traditional American values along with Christianity. The Red Scare was a move away from classical liberalism, backed up by the Constitution, to a much more fascistic United States, which willingly violated multiple amendments making up the rule of law in America. During 1950, the Internal Security Act of 1950, more commonly known as the McCarran Internal Security Act, made it so anybody seen as a communist or un-American by the state would be forced to register as such to the state. The act included an emergency detention statute which could be used by the government against anyone they chose by just labelling them a communist. The 1950s signalled the death of American liberal values, straight into the jaws of outright fascism. But you can't call the United States fascist. It doesn't matter how many people they detain without due process and habeas corpus, blatantly violating the Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution. You can't call them fascists. The West is never wrong. When we do coups and genocides in foreign countries, it's for peace. We spread peace by killing your people and forcing you under the boots of tyrants. How these corruptions of language have just been accepted is beyond many people's comprehension, but it's much more understandable if these regimes have been labelled with a well-poisoning label. Just call them communists, and this will work because the public has been educated through universal education and their news media that communism is a satanic cabal plotting to take over the United States and install a totalitarian regime where you'll be nothing but a cog in the regime. You see what happened there? Through changing the meanings of words, we managed to make the majority of a country's population support genocide. That's the power of language. That's the power of Newspeak. To peel back the facade of lies obscuring the truth requires effort. Effort which most don't care to put in. For most of us, we are content to accept that war is peace, that freedom is slavery, that ignorance is strength. We believe we are maintaining peace through killing innocent civilians with drones. We believe if we break away from the cult of statism, that we will become slaves to our needs. We believe that we are strong because we don't know better than what the aristocracy says to us. We have been enslaved by our words and are artificially limited vocabulary. Remember our example of what happened to the word free in Oceania? A similar thing happened in the United States. Whilst it retained its meaning of political freedom, the usage was made extremely broad. Freedom is what the government wants. If it wants to invade foreign countries, it's for freedom. If it wants to detain people who oppose the government, it's to protect freedom. Freedom is the ability to lock up any political dissidents the government sees fit to. The word has lost its meaning. Not through the over-specialization of the word like in Oceania, but the opposite. The word was made so broad that pinning down any meaning for the word became next to impossible. Language control is a key part of authoritarian regimes, and it can be done in many ways. Specialization and generalization are the ways this is done, but there are other ways also. Have you ever noticed when the government performs an action that it is given a different name to when a citizen does it? If you haven't, here's some examples. When you steal something, that's theft. Theft is a crime. You go to prison for theft. When the government steals something, you'll never hear it called theft. No, it's civil asset forfeiture. When you are threatened with kidnapping if you don't pay a ransom, if you kidnap someone and do that to them, that's extortion. When the government does that, it's called taxation. Littered all over our society, you will find small inconsistencies like this. By changing the language, it's somehow more moral and righteous to engage in the same barbaric actions, and the government knows this, and makes routine use of such words to give itself legitimacy and moral righteousness. And how about the legal system? That's a minefield of gibberish language designed to disadvantage you and give control to the establishment. When you're defending yourself from the government, you better know their language, or it's game over for you. You will lose. They will run all over you, and you have no way out. So what do? Do you talk normally and let them take everything and twist it against you? Do you attempt to mimic their language and fail miserably at doing so? Or do you just give in and take the plea deal, even if you didn't commit a crime? The world of government is one of intimidation and exploiting your human nature. The judge towers over you, putting you in a position of inferiority and subservience. Your solicitor only cares about himself, and if he gains from throwing you under the bus, he will in a heartbeat. You are a slave of your own ignorance. Do they ever teach you how to defend yourself in court while you're at school? Do they ever teach you this deceptive language, or do you have to learn it yourself? Asking this question should help you realise what side the government is on in all of this. Language can be a wonderful thing. We can create whole new ideas by compacting phrases into words which are easier to use, referring to a complex phenomenon which can be much easier if you just use a widely understood word to discuss it. The complexities of the mind's abilities to learn can just be called intelligence. The structure of the universe based on the laws of physics can be called space-time. We know what these terms mean, and knowledge of these terms and the phenomena behind them put us in a position of intellectual discovery about the universe, humanity, and our inner biology. To express such themes with such ease is a gift bestowed upon by our advanced vocal organs, allowing us to form so many distinct vowels and consonants with our voice. These abilities should be admired by us. To combine this with the proportionally largest brains will allow us a gift other animals will never experience. Whilst animals have made tools, have they or will they ever discuss philosophy? Will they ever devise an understanding of physics? Will they ever reach the moon? What separates us from the animals is achievement. No other species has done anywhere near as much as humans have, and with the first steps made to creating humans immune from all possible diseases, we still have a long way to go. None of this would be possible if we couldn't communicate on the high level we do, and for that we thank language. Thanks for watching, and thanks to the Journey Less Travel community for making this video possible. The Journey Less Traveled community is a community which creates intellectual, thought-provoking videos like this one you just watched. You can join this community through the link in the description. And if you loved this video and want to see more high quality content like this, drop some money into the Journey Less Traveled Patreon. It all goes to making this channel's content better. Finally, if you want to post this video on your YouTube channel, you can do that. At the Journey Less Traveled, we care about the message. And if you can let that message reach more ears, then you should be able to do that without copyright getting in the way. At the Journey Less Traveled, we believe in the freedom of information. You do not need our permission to download this video or any others on this channel to re-upload them on your own channel. If you want to share this video either to your friends or your YouTube channel, you can find the MP4 link in the description for download. Thank you for watching, and thank you for travelling along the Journey Less Traveled.